Hi, I'm Jeanette, and I'm going to offer you a pretty restorative practice today. In part, that's because I have really been feeling unwell, and I'm actually not even really able to stand up without getting dizzy. So, this is a great practice for you as well if you've been kind of under the weather, something that you can do in a really restful way. This is also a really good practice. I know that there have been tons of really awesome videos posted from our other trainers and instructors that are for much more active practice. And if you are feeling up to that, I hope you're getting it. I hope you're able to maintain the level of activity that you need in your life. So this can also just serve as a really nice kind of complement and a balance to those more active practices. This can be your yoga practice for the day if this is kind of where your energy level or your emotional level is, but it's also great to do like if you have a really vigorous workout earlier in the day and then you want to kind of end your day with something restful. This is a nice way to kind of finish your day as well if it's kind of more of an evening practice for you, but it's really something. It's going to be short-ish and something that you can just kind of work into your life wherever or however it fits in. And in addition to that, if there's just any one or two poses from this that are really good takeaways for you, then I hope you find ways to incorporate them into your daily practices or your more regular practices, even without having to follow any sort of video, just a pose that you find really restorative or really refreshing. I hope that it offers you some tools like that that you can kind of just build into your normal routines in ways that work for you. And these practices are in pairs. So you can if you go through the whole practice and you just find a few that really work for you, you can just pull those out and do those anytime. Like I said, in the morning or at night. It's really kind of up to you how you want to fit them into your life. But these are, like I said, some of them are kind of ideally paired together so that you can get the sort of balanced benefits of doing them both. So since it is a restorative practice, there are going to be long periods of silence, which in a restorative yoga class may not feel strange, but I'm anticipating that feeling a little awkward being a video. At least my feeling is I normally need to like fill the silence with more talking in the videos, but there will be more silence, so just be prepared for that and know that if you want to play soft music of your choice, you can do that while you're listening to the video. And I also just want to say that if there's something you're doing in the practice and it's just great for you and you want to sort of stick with that, I'm going to keep our poses to about 2 to 3 minutes. But in a restorative practice, it's great, even recommended, to hold your poses for 5 minutes or longer. So for the purposes of the video, I'm not going to have us hold each one for quite that long, but you are welcome to do that if you just want to find out what the pose is, get yourself into it, and then pause the video until you're ready for the next thing and then kind of resume. And like I said, you might want to choose some music that you really like that's nice and relaxing to kind of give you the ambiance that you need. So I've set up my mat, if you can see, to be facing the short end into the wall. And that's because we're going to start in a Shavasana kind of position with our feet on the wall. So I'm also going to recommend for this placing something under your knees and some other props that you might want for this. And because it is restorative, we generally do use a lot more props. A blanket could be really nice. Anything that's like a bolster. If you've seen the yoga props video that I posted last week, I gave you some alternatives for things like that. What I'm going to use for this one is this little stuff sack with a blanket shoved inside that is just a nice little kind of cylinder to place under my knees for support, and that gives you that low back support. But any kind of pillow, you can roll up a blanket, anything that works for that. If you have blocks at your home, you might use the blocks under your knees for that effect. A strap could be useful. We're going to do a little bit of forward folding, and any kind of pillows, so you get a little extra support. And any pillows can work. Pillows from your bed, from your sofa, wherever you have them around the house. So like I said, we're going to start with our feet on the wall. And the reason that we're doing this is because that is, it has kind of a grounding effect. So when we lie down, we're supported by the earth underneath us. But when we stand, we get that really kind of grounded, rooting feeling through the bottoms of our feet. And so we're able to kind of accomplish both of those in one go when we lie down and place your feet on the wall. So you just want your heels to go right into this kind of corner here where the wall meets the floor. And then if you're using any kind of a bolster or a pillow to tuck under your knees, if you like that for additional low back support, then you can just kind of slide it into place here. And I'm not sure if you can see me, but as you come to lie down on your back, you can do a couple different things. So just kind of adjust your feet into the wall. Notice that feeling of grounding, almost as if you're standing on the earth. And if you have that bolster or pillow underneath your knees, just kind of adjust it so that your low back feels supported, your legs are comfortable. You might scoot your shoulder blades a little closer together so you feel some support under your heart space. And if it feels okay, you might turn the palms of your hands to face up. Just letting your eyes kind of close softly here. Just allow your attention to sink inward. And allow the attention to sit with your breath. And then just notice whatever comes up. Notice what you're feeling physically, energetically, emotionally. And just acknowledge whatever it is. And know that whatever comes up for you here is exactly what needs to come up. That whatever you're feeling in any given moment, that's exactly what you need to feel to take you to the next moment. So just allowing yourself to observe that, not to be taken over by it, but just to see it for what it is, accept it, and then just sink a little deeper. And see if you can give yourself at least 10 deep breaths here, in and out through the nose. Together, let's take a deep inhale breath through the nose, really filling the lungs, the ribs, and the belly. Exhaling deeply through the nose. And then another deep inhale breath through the nose, followed by a cleansing breath through the mouth. And then kind of taking that feeling of the breath through the mouth, see if you can close your mouth, but continue to breathe, allowing the breath to wash over the back of the throat. And you can gently constrict the back of the throat so that it creates kind of a noisy sounding breath. One that we often affectionately call Darth Vader breathing, or in yoga we call it Ujjayi breath. So kind of a deeper breath, you might feel your belly moving a little more here. We're going to transition to a bridge. So if you have a bolster under your knees, you can just kind of slide it out of the way and bring your feet flat to the floor, about hips width apart. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn my mat to this side. You can stay right where you are. But I'm just going to sit myself up and turn the mat so that you can see what I'm doing a little better. So if you're bringing your feet flat to the floor, you want to set them up so that they're about hips width apart. And to take a restorative bridge pose, you're going to want something like a block. Again, if you watch the yoga props video, I showed you that you can use books in place of a block. You might have a block around. You can also just stack pillows or blankets underneath you for this. What you're going to want is just some elevation underneath your hips. So as you're lying down on your back, again, your feet are going to come flat to the floor. You want them to be about as wide as your hips. And as you inhale, you're going to root the feet down so that the hips lift. You can take your block or whatever you're using and slide it underneath your tailbone. So with the block in place here, then you can kind of decide, if you're using an actual block, right, you're probably pretty familiar with this. You can use the block on any setting that you like. You can flip it up or down, or if you're using blankets or pillows or something, then you can just kind of stack more blankets or fewer underneath until you find the height that you're really comfortable with. You can remain here with your feet flat on the floor. If you're doing that, another option that you might like to try is to kind of tie something around your legs to hold your knees kind of moving toward the midline. So in our studio, of course, we have the nice belts with a little buckle on them, which I don't have. So I'm just going to take this stretchy band, I'm just going to kind of tie it. And that way it holds your legs kind of upright. So you don't have to do that work on your own, but so that the knees stay moving toward the midline, like I said. Just gives you a little bit more support here so that you can really relax into the posture without having to do any muscular effort. You can also, and you can keep the strap for this or you can remove it, you can keep your feet flat or you can slide your heels out so that your legs are straight. And this can provide a little bit more hip opening. So it's kind of up to you. If you are taking this option with the legs out long, you might turn your block down to a lower setting. That might feel more comfortable to you, but it's really up to you how you want to use the time. And then once you've kind of picked your posture, you can go ahead, let your eyes close again, return to your breath, maybe turn your music up, and find yourself in a nice, comfortable place. And so when you're ready to come out of your bridge pose, you can gently root your feet down to lift your hips up and slide your block out. If your legs have been extended, then of course you're first going to want to bring your feet flat. And then lift the hips to remove the block. And if you have your strap or your kind of makeshift strap around your legs, go ahead and remove that here. We're just going to let the knees rock gently from side to side a couple times. And your feet can go wider apart or closer together for this. You can do this for as long as you like. So you can do it for even up to a minute. Depending on how long you've been holding your bridge, you may feel like you need more or less of this. And then when you are ready, you can have the knees into the chest, and you can either rock yourself up to a seat from here, or you can roll to the side and use your arms to press up. So this next pose is kind of the complement to a restorative bridge. Basically, the structure of this practice, which is kind of heart opening, is to open the front of the body and then the back of the body. So we just did a restorative bridge pose, which is a front body opener, especially kind of around the hips into the belly and also a little bit in the chest. So we're going to pair this with a restorative child's pose. So if you have some of the things that I mentioned you might want, you can grab, I think in this particular pose, a pillow or whatever you're using as kind of like a makeshift bolster. A blanket could be really nice. And then any kind of substitute for a block. So I'm using a block, but you could use like a really thick book, like a cookbook or a dictionary works really well. Or if you've watched the yoga props video, Some of the hardback Harry Potter books are really great as blocks. But any kind of book like that that's thicker, or you can stack books on top of each other as well. So to come into this posture, you're going to want to let your big toes touch. Widen out your knees to the width of the mat. And you're going to bring your big pillow, whatever you're using here, kind of right up in between your knees. So this is going to support you as you lie down into your child's pose. What I like to do with this is actually give myself a little bit of a ramp. So your block or whatever you're using for a block can go underneath the end that's farther away from you so that it's a little bit lifted up. And you can actually stack this up as high as you want so that as you fold over, it comes to kind of meet you where you are. When we do this in the studio, we don't usually actually have bolsters, so we don't get to do this one very often, and I really enjoy this pose. If you want to use a blanket, sometimes if like another book might be a little bit too much, but you just need a little bit of extra height, you can fold up a blanket or use a thinner pillow over the top. You can also use a blanket here to tuck between your heels and your hips. So if you find any discomfort here, you might like to sit back on that. That just kind of like fills the gap. Or if the tops of your feet or your ankles feel any kind of pain or discomfort, you can roll this up. And then you can place it underneath the front of your feet. And it kind of protects those sort of like bonier parts of your ankles from that harder ground underneath you. You can also always, especially in poses like this where our knees are on the mat, it can feel a little bit better to place a blanket underneath your knees and legs, or like fold up a towel there. So just anything to give you a little bit of extra cushion if you feel like you need it. So I'm actually going to fold up my blanket and place it on top of my bolster as I come into this, just for that little bit of extra height. And from here, you're just going to walk your hands forward. Let your belly, your chest, and then your chin come down to rest. You can turn your head to one side. And just kind of drop into it. Let yourself feel completely supported and held. And feel your shoulders kind of softening around the bolster. If it feels good to keep your arms reaching forward, that's great. You might also prefer the version of child's pose where your arms are kind of reaching back, so the backs of your hands rest next to your feet on the floor. Either one of those is fine. Whatever feels good to you, you can close your eyes. Just kind of drop in. If you've got your music playing, let it play. Just kind of notice your breath, notice your body, and allow yourself to soften. And about halfway through your pose, we're going to turn our heads to the other side. So you're just going to pick up your head, flip the other ear down. To come out of the pose, turn your chin to the bolster and start to walk your hands in towards your knees to sit up. And as you sit up, you might just kind of roll your shoulders out a couple of times, bringing them forward, up and back. And then you can draw your shoulders back up to the ears and round forward about the same number of times. So the next set of poses that we're going to do, again, is going to be another front body opener and back body opener. And you might want, again, your bolster will be really useful, maybe a blanket and a block as well. So we're going to start with the back bend. This can be done in a number of ways, and it kind of depends on what props you're using for this. So this back bend is going to be more focused in the opening across the chest, right? Like our bridge pose was more focused around the hips. So we are going to emphasize that, and many of you may actually be familiar with this one. I do a lot in my classes, a restorative fish pose using 2 blocks. Since it is really hard to find 2 identical books to use as blocks, or you might not be able to utilize them to be as high as you want them to be, I'm going to give you options to do this using some type of pillow and blanket instead. But also you might want to use your block or block substitute. So the first thing you want to focus on is elevating your heart space. So you have your pillow, or you can stack a couple pillows. You can take it across your mat the horizontal way. And you're going to lie down with your shoulders over that. So your shoulders are going to go over the block, and your head is going to be hanging back when you do this. That, for some people, does feel good. For me, it doesn't particularly feel good because I have some issues with my neck. So I always like to provide a little bit of extra support, and that's where this block can be really nice. You can just kind of slide it up underneath the base of your skull, and it can support your head. You can place it as high or as low as you want it. Your arms can open really wide out to the side, or maybe come down along the sides of the body. It can also feel good to have a hand on the belly and a hand on the heart. Your legs can kind of do whatever you want them to do. You might have your feet flat on the floor, which can feel really nice to support the low back. You can extend your legs out long like you're in Shavasana. Or you can add a little hip opening to this with Supta Baddha Konasana legs by bringing the soles of the feet to touch and the knees open. Another option that you have for this, especially if your spine feels like it needs a little bit more support, is to take your pillow, and if it's long enough, and if it's not, you can join up multiple pillows. You can turn it so that it's actually long like the mat, so that when you lie back, it's actually supporting most of the length of your spine and your head together. This bolster for me feels a little bit thick, so I'm actually going to push it up a little bit so that my hips can rest easily on the mat without feeling like they're being kind of forced into a weird position. And this is something that you'll kind of feel out and adjust in whatever ways it feels best to you. So you've got yourself here, and again, you have the same choices for your arms and for your legs. You can be doing that hip opening. You can have your knees pointing up, arms along the side of the body, or resting on your torso. So whatever really feels good to you is the best way to do this pose. Again, there are also options to use blocks. So instead of using the bolster, you can, if you have a second block or something that works for you as a second block, you can utilize that option instead. So as you come to lie down and find yourself in whatever position makes you feel most comfortable, bring your attention back into your breath. And again, we're going to take about 10 deep breaths here, or if you'd like to prolong your time in this posture, you can just pause the video and hold for as long as you like. We're ready to come out of this posture. You can gently roll over to one side. And that might roll you off of your props, or you might still be on top of them. So just kind of press yourself up gently with your hands to sit up. So for the next posture, which is going to be a forward fold, we're going to take a lot of these same props that we've been using. We're going to sit back on our hips. This is going to be a forward fold. So because I have pretty tight hamstrings and hips, most of the time when I fold forward, I like to bring a little bit of lift underneath my seat. So I'm going to sit on a blanket. You can use a blanket, a pillow, anything that you have that feels like about the right height. And then I'm going to take my pillow bolster and I'm going to set it on top of my lap. So as we're folding forward, there's a couple different things. What I want you to emphasize most in this shape is the rounding of your spine. There are a lot of forward folds that we can do where we really want to emphasize lengthening the hamstrings. And you might feel that a bit, and that's fine. But if you feel like that's coming at the expense of being able to really round into the shape, then I want you to bend your knees a little bit. You can even place your feet flat on the floor, which is what I'm going to do. And that's actually going to be really nice for me. So as I fold forward, with the pillow here, it just makes it really easy to just round and let the forehead or the nose just kind of drop to the pillow. You can also turn your head to one side or the other like we did in child's pose, just making sure that you allow yourself to turn your head the other way about halfway through. If you feel like whatever you're doing, like if you have your legs just extended here, and if you feel like you're not really able to round and get your forehead down, you might take something else that you're using, just kind of build it up so that you have a really nice, easy support so that you can just kind of drop into it. Like I said, the important thing about this is not to get a really deep stretch, which is more of a yin yoga thing than a restorative yoga thing. If you happen to feel that and it feels good, please allow yourself to continue to benefit from that. But if you feel like I said, that's kind of coming at the expense of the shape, which is really about getting the counter, the balance pose to that heart opening that we just did, then just do whatever options kind of allow you that. So again, I'm going to have my feet flat here so I can just kind of round right into this. Your arms can just kind of relax. Palms can be down or up, depending on what feels good. Taking your forehead, your nose, your chin, or your ear to the bolster. You can close your eyes. 10 deep breaths. When you're ready, we're gently going to roll up. Let your head be heavy. It'll be the last thing to lift and stack on top of your spine. You can move your pillow off to the side, out of the way. Maybe extend your legs. Maybe point and flex your feet a couple times. Give your shoulders a couple more rolls. Just any kind of little movement. It's really nice to break up the stillness of our restorative practice with like little tiny little movements in between our poses. And so our last little pairing of poses is actually going to be a set of twists, one going one way and then to the other side as a counter. So for this, again, you're going to want that big pillow, sort of bolster substitute, maybe a blanket, and you may also want to use your block. So you're going to set yourself up with your bolster coming in to your hip, and you're going to sit like a mermaid. right? So I'm sitting on my left hip, which means my left leg's coming around, kind of folded in front. My right leg kind of folds around behind me. Because of the way my body is shaped, my right hip is a little bit lifted here. And if you feel that, block under the seat for me might be a little bit too much. Maybe a blanket can tuck under there if you feel like you need support. You can also use your blanket here. We're going to turn, we're going to kind of twist down over this big pillow here. So if you feel like it doesn't quite meet you where you are, so for me as I'm kind of walking forward, I feel a little bit of strain, right? My spine doesn't quite want to get into this shape really comfortably. So you can just kind of build it up. So your blanket, maybe multiple blankets or another pillow can work really well to kind of bring the floor to you, basically, is what you're kind of aiming to do here. I think for me, one blanket here works really well to come under my belly in a way that my spine likes. You can also use your block again to make a little bit of a ramp like you did in your child's pose if you prefer that level of elevation. So you're just kind of walking your hands out as you twist. Belly comes down, then your ribs, your chest, and your chin. You can decide which way you want to turn your head. So for me, it usually feels best to turn and look the way that my knees are pointing. You might go kind of full twist up to the neck by turning your head away, which to me feels a little bit strenuous to the neck, but you can decide. So just letting your shoulders kind of round over your pillow, relaxing, letting your body just kind of sink into the shape. Again, 10 breaths here is good. And when you're ready to sit up, your hands can just kind of walk in toward your hips. Press yourself up gently. And so to move this to the other side, probably the simplest way is just to leave your props set up the way they are and turn yourself around so that your other hip comes into the block. Because you won't be able to see me, I'm going to turn myself around. I'm just going to move my whole little playground over. I really picked the squeakiest spot of the floor today for this. So, again, you've got your bolster coming up into your hip. You're going to turn your body toward the bolster, leaving your legs as they are. Walking your hands out. Your belly comes down, ribs, chest, chin. And then you can decide which way to turn your head. And take your 10 deep breaths. When you're ready to sit up, walking the hands in toward the hips, sitting yourself up. Something that I noticed that I was doing as I was lying there was the way that my hands were on the mat. I was like holding this tension in my wrist, right, to keep my wrist elevated for some inexplicable reason. And that's the kind of thing that you really get the opportunity to notice in a practice like this, where you're holding the poses for such a long time, that you can really just start to kind of scan your body and notice where tension is happening. A lot of those are habits that we have, right? We like have the habit of tensing the jaw at all times, and so we might automatically know to check in with those because we're used to that. But it does, like, I've never noticed myself doing that before. I've probably done it hundreds of times, but it just gives us that opportunity to really start noticing where the body kind of grabs on, and just kind of breathing in, letting it release. And so maybe that's something that I'll need to pay more attention to from now on is, am I tensing my wrists, right? Something I've never noticed that I was doing before, but I probably do all the time. So this is not just a practice for you to enjoy in the moment, but to kind of teach you about yourself and how you hold tension, and how you can kind of use, like, create new habits to release. So the next posture that I'm going to offer you is going to be Shavasana. Rather than having us hold Shavasana together, I'm just going to offer you that here so that you can really take your time and hold it for as long as you like. You can return to any of the poses that we've done in the practice so far. If they were really great for you and you feel like you kind of rushed through and you didn't get enough time, I really encourage you to go back to those and let that be how you end your practice. You might also turn around and place your feet on the wall again if you really like that feeling of having that kind of sense of grounding in the bottoms of the feet. But any other pose that is restorative, relaxing for you, maybe just a classic Shavasana laid out on the floor with no props, nothing around you, not touching anything, just kind of being in your body and feeling your breath. I encourage you to end your practice in any way that really feels right to you. So I will end us here. I want to thank you very much for sharing your practice with me today, and I wish you the best. Namaste.